I'm going to talk about what's going on in the park this year. There's a lot happening, not just on trails, but the park manager, nicknamed Sunshine, that's what she goes by, who's been there just a few years now. He's got a lot of new things happening. The visitor center, they're working on programming that'll be starting up later this summer. We're actually planning to do a talk in Rockport Library on different programs that the park is going to be offering. I think that's August 2nd. Anyway, so yeah, there's like stuff in the works. The auto road's getting repaved later this summer. Culverts replaced and repaved, and that's made possible by infrastructure grant monies, which is also how I'm here, which was great timing for me because I care about these trails and I came in wanting to help, and there was some funding available to make it happen. So Sunshine helped me get the job to help improve the trails. And go from something rooted. This is not the same location. I'm not fooling you here, but you know, a lot of the old trails in the park were straight line carriage roads, which is not the best trail layout because water can't get off of them. And so the roads gets rooted, gullied, and sometimes the only way to fix them is throw a whole lot of rock in there. That's an 18-step staircase on the right that we just built on Maiden's Cliff Trail after the bridge. Collaborated with the town Parks and Rec because it's their land. So they sent out a bunch of people, and that only took a day and a half with a bunch of people coordinating. So that was pretty cool. It was the longest staircase I'd ever built. It didn't take very long, but that was with a lot of people helping Corey, and we had plenty of rock until the very end when it seemed like we exhausted our supply. And so fortunately we had another plan at the top because some of these trails, as they currently go straight, seems like you could just keep building stairway and keep building it on forever. Anyhow, so trail maintenance is made possible by volunteers, as well as with some guidance, which is what I do, and Sunshine there in front. The park manager helps make it all happen. A little more background on myself. I first started trail work in 2009 during college summers on trail crew. That's for my first year with a bunch of young punks, 18 to 25-year-olds with mohawks, or I tried dreadlocks, which was a terrible idea. And so learned how to do this rock work at the time, which is really the bread and butter of trail rehabilitation. Sometimes you can use wood structures, but they've got a much shorter lifespan. You look around the park and a lot of the rock work that is there that we know when it was put in, such as the long staircases you're heading up Bald Rock. And I think a number of the staircases on Maiden's Cliff and other places were done by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s. So those are already 90 years old and they still work. They're still solid, rock solid stairs. Sometimes they get undermined though. So that's part of what we're going to talk about. Oh, right. Another thing we're going to talk about, because I was going to say that as structures can get undermined, part of being a good trail steward is recognizing these structures and knowing how to use a trail properly. And so part of that, I just want to go through leave no trace. Like, how many people here could name all 7 principles of leave no trace? I'm not surprised. But for a hiking community, it seems like something we should be teaching, talking about. And so that's where I see myself as also a role educator, because I've been doing this a while, and I see that, well, you might teach anybody to build a bridge, but it's like you also have to convince people that the bridge is the best option to take sometimes, or the stairs more like. Bridges people like because they keep you out of the mud, but people don't like stairs. So a ramp is easier, but then it erodes the side of the trail. So we'll just go through Leave No Trace real quick, because this pertains to how you interact with the trail. Number one, plan ahead and prepare. If you don't have a plan or you're not prepared with all the gear, it's going to be hard to adhere to the other 6 principles. The next one is to travel and camp on durable surfaces. This is the one I care the most about. Soil on a slope is not durable. It will get worn down, erode. Even when it's dry or relatively dry, like you'll see people walking up a slope and you see that little skid track behind their foot. That's soil moving downhill. That trail is losing material and it becomes a trough. I've often heard, well, the trail is in the low spot. It didn't start that way. It became that way. So by keeping on the trail, you're minimizing the spread of that erosion. And you might not think mud is durable, but then walking around the mud is essentially, killing more plants, compacting more soil, and making that muddy area wider. And then the whole trail is just less pleasant for everybody. Dispose of waste properly. Sure you all have heard about, going 200 feet from water at least, digging a 6-inch cap hole and all that. Better plan ahead and bring your trowel if you're going to do that. Or hopefully in Camden, you're never too far from that house. But also wrappers, all that jazz. People tend to leave places clean if they find them clean. So not everybody. That's what we hope for. Leave what you find includes leaving places pristine. If you find them pristine, leave them pristine. Creating a campsite is not leaving that a wild space anymore. There are ways to do low impact camping where you leave and it doesn't look like a campsite was ever there. Or you use an established one. It's also good. Minimize campfire impact, obviously, don't want any wildfires. And be respectful of wildlife and other visitors. So if you are passing another party on the trail and you want to step aside to let them go by, think about stepping on a durable surface like a rock. So being respectful of both others, but also the trail. All right, now we'll get into erosion and what do we do about it? It's a big issue on a lot of these trails. The photo on the left is looking down into a big gully on Scenic Trail, just a bit above Maiden's Cliff. And there are places where gauging by the heights of the banks and such, it looks like up to 4 feet of soil is gone from that location from how it originally was. That's a lot of soil, and not only is it a problem because now it became a scramble to get up that gully and expose slick bedrock in places, but also as mineral soil erodes away, it's washing down into Lake Megunticook or other water bodies, wetlands, and that's carrying with it phosphorus and other nutrients, which support algae. Nobody likes algae in their lakes. So sometimes we use the strategy of hardening up the space with rock. I've got some slides later where we did that. But you know, the water is still coursing down there, could create erosion downstream or at least a concentrated runoff. What we did here actually is we rerouted around the gully, tried to make a more durable route, and then started cutting dead wood from all over the place and piling it into the gully. And our hope is simply that that will act like a sieve and collect leaves and start to dam it up so water can't rush down there. Things can start to regrow, soil reform. We'll see how it works. That was an awful big gully to fill. But yeah, if I can, this is a little bit wandering, I apologize, but just to talk about what is durable trail layout, it would be one where water can flow off naturally. It has a lot of opportunities to do so. Straight lines are not durable, especially straight uphill. Even angled uphill, if it goes straight for too long, you know, as that trail gets compacted and eroded down a little bit, there's usually, it loses that outslope on the edge, and so water keeps in that diagonal down the hill. Zeke's trail is a great example of that. It's doing way better than, say, Slope Trail, which goes straight up. But there are still sections that have trapped water that goes up an angle up the hill in a straight line. And there are some water bars there that are functioning well. Volunteers helping move rocks. Oh yeah, so on the left there is where we cut a little reroute around one of those sections, either Maidens or Slope or Scenic Trail, to get around something that was a growing erosion problem. And to do so, we're looking at terrain where water can flow off naturally. Maybe we're bench into the hillside a little bit to create a more flat surface to walk on, down the mineral soil, so you know it's not just getting compacted, roots pop up. If you go make a new trail in the woods just with your feet, well, you add 10,000 more feet to that this year, which is likely for something like Nathan's Cliff Trail, and all that organic matter is going to get packed down, and then the roots pop up. And that's what was happening in a lot of places. So by actually cutting in a path, we're establishing, you know, here's what the depth of the tread is going to be, and the water can run off. In situations where we want to just keep the existing trail, because sometimes it's easier, sometimes there's a lot of work that's already gone into the trail, or we're being told not to do reroutes, we can use water bars. Water bars are essentially lines of rock, or like bikers like to use grade dips, I think they call them, made entirely out of dirt. Those can work depending on the terrain, but on a consistent uphill, really you need to reinforce that dirt with rock. So we've got a rock water bar here. This one is just downhill of a spring, so it's always got water flowing, it seems, and works great for getting that water off the trail. They're at about a 45-degree angle to the trail and just divert the water off. After cleaning 46 water bars on the Guntacook Trail alone, I don't want to be overusing these because that's a lot of work to maintain. They fill up with leaves. Those are easy to rake out, but they also silt up with sediment. And nobody had dug the sediment out in quite a while, which means a lot of them were pretty filled up, and a heavy rain, they're just going to overflow. So that all gets dug out, piled over the backside, downhill slope. And that's a lot of work to do every year, maybe twice a year. Some of the ones like on Maiden Cliff Trail, that first slope where it's a long straight shot, a lot of water coming down there, clearly there's been a lot of erosion. Fist-sized rocks are now filling up the water bars that we cleaned this spring, because the water is moving so fast, it's carrying those rocks down into it. So Water bars alone are not always the solution. There are trails where there's one every 30 feet for a stretch, and in between is still wet because that ground had eroded so far, the whole hillside is just seeping, and so it's still wet. So that's where I really advocate for rerouting. And but when we reroute, we ought to pile stuff in there, let it dam up, drop trees across it, even break that flow of water. More water bars. There's one that's been cleaned out. There's a volunteer reshaping one. Photo on the left was a water bar that somebody had placed rocks flat across, I think mountain bikers, so that they could bike over it easier. I felt a little guilty for taking them out because it's going to make it harder to bike over. But as it was, those rocks were blocking the water flow, and so it would come right back into the trail. So I took the rocks out and I moved them up to the very top of the water bar to make a ramp up there, as you can see on the right. That's a compromise. Often people throw things into water bars when they're clearing trails because I think they're the least understood structure. So if you're out there clipping branches or sawing blowdowns out, do not throw them into the drainage. That defeats the purpose. It took 3 of us to tip that giant waterlogged stump out of the water bar on the left there. The other problem with them, some of them have been built so that the rocks stick up like the bones of the Stegosaurus back. And it's not very friendly. So people walk around that on both sides. And I think this one may have already been rebuilt. Maine Conservation Corps is back this summer, and they're working on the Gunscrook Trail, which that photo was taken on. As well as walking around water bars that don't have a friendly stepping surface, people are walking around stairs. They walk around roots if there's some erosion under a root, and that's a high step. And I'm not saying that people are intentionally trying to erode trails. And I'm not blaming you if you've done it, because probably most of us have. We don't even think about it. We're not really thinking about what impact each step is having on the trail. We're out for a hike. We're just enjoying, we're like listening to the birds and doing whatever we're doing, having a conversation. And that looks like an obstacle. It doesn't look like a trail. So that's the task ahead, is making it look like a trail again, making the trail the best option. So sometimes that just means making the side path the worst option. Better yet, it would be improve the situation by maybe adding a smaller step under that route and then block the side. Sometimes the steps are already there. Like in the photo on the left, the steps were already there. The rocks on the right were not. I added them so that it would retain that soil. Once people walk on the side of the steps, that soil starts to wash away. Eventually the steps can fall out. They get slanted. See that out there on the trails, slanted steps. On the right, that's where there was kind of a jumble of rocks and there wasn't a clear path. Again, some of the steps higher up were getting undermined, looked like they were going to fall out. So we made one clear path. MCC started this staircase and I finished it with some volunteers. It's a great looking staircase. That section of trail used to be very wide because of all the roots and mud on that slope. And so in addition to the staircase, we rolled some rocks and piled a bunch of sticks on the side, keep people out. And as long as people stay off of it, it can regrow. So this is how we rehabilitate sections. It's not just about the new steps. If the slope is not super steep, steps don't have to be connected. These are what's called check steps. They check the flow of water by flattening out a section of the trail and they keep that gully from continuing to erode. We might not be filling it in completely, but we're slowing the water. And it takes a lot of rock to do all this, but we use rocks of any size. Have people who are strong, people who are and can move big rocks, people who are moving bowling ball size rocks. Those are still super useful. We're blocking the path around the smaller rocks, or sometimes we have a place that just needs a smaller rock. Steps might be a little bigger, but we use those on the sides. So we appreciate any rocks that can be in there. Here's another example of a gully, top of Adams Lookout Trail, but at the junction of tablelands. In places I measured up to the bank, it was 2 feet soil had gone. And I wasn't gonna totally fill it back in, but I started at the bottom and just started putting rock in there so it won't erode any further. And that's eventually what it looked like from the bottom and from the top. Just holding in those banks, creating a series of small enough steps. Of course, being a trail worker and somebody who appreciates steps, I think long staircases are really cool, but I recognize not everybody likes stairs that go on forever. So like the photo on the right, that's an old staircase. I don't know how long it's been there. But that to me is excessive. That trail shouldn't be going in a straight line up that hill for that long. I'm surprised they managed to find enough rock for a staircase that long. It gets challenging after a little while to find enough rock. The other thing that happens with erosion is you can get down the slab, and if it's flat and level, it makes a beautiful trail, like on the left. But if you're going along the side of it, it's really awkward. If you're going straight up it, it can be really slippery. On the left there, I had enough soil on the right edge to build a staircase. So where people had them, if I had a wider photo, you could see like another 10 feet of slope had been trampled, roots were getting exposed, and there's ledge under all that. And on the right, as you see, the ledge has gotten very wide because once the roots are exposed and trampled, they die. And then eventually people have to go even farther to the edge in order to keep hiking on good footing. And the trail gets wider and wider. So some sections, like that photo on the right is Mountaintop Trail, and some sections there are like 30 feet wide of slab. There's no easy way up, and it's only going to continue that trend if left unchecked. So again, MCC is working on Mountaintop Trail this summer, and the plan we came up with so far, if it works, is actually to drill into the bedrock, because you can't set rock steps against a slippery slab like that. You could do wooden ladders, but then they're going to rot out too and become a liability or a hazard. So we're going to actually try to chisel some steps in there and put in a railing on iron posts, drill into the rock to give people a better route up that. And this is from the top of one of those slabs, actually from the bottom of that super long staircase I showed you, where the bottom rock has fallen out. Because water is still rushing down that slope, down over all those steps, and eroded out the soil at the bottom, exposing that slab. And now there's nothing to hold those rocks. So that staircase is starting to slide down the slab. So, got to get the erosion in check. It's been way too long since anybody addressed it. But now we're doing something. Now there's a little more focus on trail maintenance in the park with MCC here. They were here last summer. This summer, they're slated to be here next summer as well. This is all through the ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan Act. And I was hired based on that as well. Prior to that, I don't know how much trail work was getting done, but I think a lot of it was getting done just by occasional volunteers who go out and throw a bridge over mucky area. Rock work was sporadic when they got contracts with MCC. That's great when they can get them, but it's not a sustained effort, and nobody was coming back to clean those water bars that MCC was building or others were building. So it really takes a community and people learning these skills and who can keep on doing them, who live in the area, who can visit those sites frequently and see what's going on. Flat areas also are prone to erosion. Relatively flat, if they're truly flat, maybe wouldn't have such an issue. So this is like Carriage Trail, now Bubba's Trail. It's flat, still got muddy. So I had a group of high school students carrying some heavy planks, and we added some bridges. Bridges are good, but they do rot out, and then you've got your big spikes exposed, and they teeter, and they become a hazard. A hazard themselves. So, if possible, I like to use rock. Stepping stones are great. Those are some that MCC did last year. MCC also did last year this big bridge on Nature Trail, which is pretty. Again, it's wood. I think it was a little large of a project for what was there, but it was a learning experience. Another solution for those flat areas is called turnpiking, and that's using, you can use a bit smaller rocks to create a border that's going to hold soil, and then put mineral soil, smaller rocks and mineral soil in the middle to raise that tread up. This is good when you can't find a lot of flat rocks for stepping stones. You do need to find or bring in a lot of mineral soil, which is handy if you're right by a road, but maybe not in the middle of the woods. On the right is an example where there was an old turnpike off the end of that bridge. And the rocks are still there, but the mineral soil has either sunk or gradually worn away. So we'll get replaced at some point. Okay. Had a Boy Scout group build some turnpike. That's a good job for younger folks, actually, because you don't need quite as big rocks. Kind of doubled up or took a bunch of the extra small rocks and piled them against on the outside to really shore things up. Because some of them seemed a little on the small side. And on the uphill side, we have ledge roots to hold that soil. It's not going to wash uphill. And then another thing that we did with the Boy Scouts, and that we'll do if we find stuff out on the trail, is pull invasive plants. This will affect not only the hiking experience, but the health, the ecological health of the area. So on the right, we've got one of the town employees is digging a Japanese barberry that seemed to be the mother plant of that was starting to spread up around Scenic Trail. There's a lot of invasives down in the main area of the park, campground areas, because somebody planted them a long time ago. But even up in the woods, you find them sometimes. And so having eyes out there, if you see something, report it to us or call it out if you can identify it as an invasive. That's also work we're trying to do. Keep on top of them before they get out of hand. All right, the piece of trail maintenance that probably everybody thinks of immediately when they think trail maintenance is cut the blowdowns out after the winter, or when stuff falls across the trail. That's an obvious blockade. And we can all do that with a chainsaw if you want to lug that into the woods, or it's a short distance into the woods, or axes if you get the swing of it. What is maybe less obvious to people is that even branches, the growth of branches causes the trail to move and change. I've seen where there's a row of stepping stones through the mud, but the branches have gone over the stepping stones, and now everybody's walking through the mud. So, or is it same with stairs? Branches will grow over stairs. Also, when branches die, they tend to curl downwards. So you might have pruned them up here before, and then they die and they come down in your face. Nobody wants a branch in their face. So they'll go around it and trample a wider area. So pruning is really important, and I feel like it is the hardest thing to keep up with. So at the very least, if anyone wants to help and they're like, I don't know about moving rocks, take a pair of lockers out, please. Really help with that. There's like 20 miles of footpaths that are on the map. There are more that are not. A lot of the Lincolnville Hills project people know about that. Well, I'll talk about you guys in a moment. And keeping the trails cleared, look for where did the trail go? Not necessarily where are people walking now, because they're walking around the branch. But where did the trail go? Let's keep it to that. Trim those back. That's always super helpful if anybody wants to go out with their lockers. Signage. This is another thing I'm working on this summer, is taking a good inventory of what's out there. There doesn't seem to be much of an inventory. And also loosening signs that are attached to trees. A lot of them, the bolts, as the tree grows, bolt gets sucked into the tree, pulls right through the signs until the sign falls off or cracks. So you can see that photo. And so taking out a ratchet, loosening those every year is a good practice. Also helps when they're all held on by bolts and not some weird screwed to some backer that you'd have to take the whole thing apart in order to access the thing that holds it to the tree. I'm finding some weird stuff out there. And the signs, unfortunately, are kind of a weird process with the state. So if there's one like this year, it won't get replaced till next year. Yeah, more signs that have not been loosened for too long. So I think that's really it for my slideshow. Let's talk about, I want to bring up Lincolnville Hills real quick. There's a lot of people in the live audience here from that organization. It's a nonprofit that is working to bring back areas of historical or cultural significance on the Lincolnville side of the park, including like places where you can see the old historical uses, cellar holes, and stone walls from agricultural times, as well as blueberry fields, which people have been picking out for generations, and they're getting overgrown. And so some locals here formed a nonprofit to reclaim those blueberry fields from the trees that were growing in. And park staff has collaborated with them some in the past, and we hope to continue that going forward. And if anybody wants to get involved with them or with me, like we've got a sign up sheet, there's people here you can connect with from Lincolnville Hills. There's a lot of ways to get involved on trails or with the lands beyond the trails, whether that's restoring blueberry fields or pulling invasives, or even like planting lilies at the park. They're trying to make whole flower beds down there, as well as other programming that they're trying to get more programming rolling through the park. So if you feel passionate about something and want to teach it, like there's so many ways to get involved. There's a lot of organizations that all do the same thing on different lands. I've been still volunteering with the Maine Appalachian Trail Club and the Coastal Mountains Land Trust. And so we've had crossover people working in multiple organizations, or with McNinna, a bike organization. And it's great to to help each other out and experience trails on different lands and see what different tactics people have. It's cool to me to go out and work with the bikers sometimes and see, here's what they do for bikes to ride on, because there are trails in the park that allow bikes, and they might not be the trails that the bikers want to be biking on. But you know, it's good to find what people want and how we can all work together to achieve the goals of each organization. And you know, we're all in here because we want to enjoy these lands in whatever way we want to enjoy them. And I don't think we're ever stepping on each other's toes by doing so. If as long as we're all respectful and yield to the horses, then it's all good, right? So with that, if there's any questions on anything happening or on any maintenance tactics. Yes.
When are you going to start paving the road?
Did
I hear you say that?
Yeah, so that's, I think, happening starting mid-July and going through August in stages. And they're going to keep the auto road open except for a couple of days when they have to replace culverts, I think. I don't know the exact schedule.
Yeah, but this year. Okay.
But yeah, that'll be this year. Yes.
Eric, I've heard in the past that Camden Hills State Park is if not the most, one of the most popular parks in the whole state. And I wondered about the numbers of people and how that's changed over the years. That's one question. The other is, I know some snowmobilers use some of the trails in the wintertime, and what the impact of snowmobile use might be.
Yeah, good question. So I think I better handle the first one. I mean, this is only my first year working in the park, but I have heard that last year they had over 320,000 visitors through the main entrance of the park. That's the only place they're counting. And that was a record, but so was the previous year. And so is the previous year. And we've had records for like the past 5 years straight. They keep breaking them every year. So use has definitely gone up significantly in recent years. And it's clearly pretty high. I mean, if you're hiking the Gunticoke Trail in the height of summer, it's a steady stream of people on a beautiful day, especially on the weekend. Maiden Cliff Trail, I'm guessing, is the highest traffic trail in the whole system, because that's like, it takes what, 20 or 30 minutes to hike up. So it's like, depending on the route, probably an hour to hour and a half round trip. That parking lot always seems to be full. People are going up Route 52 at the height of summer, and you know that every car is changing out every hour and a half, right? So I would guess, and based on what it looks like, and when the town previous years put up some strings to try to redirect traffic when one area was getting out of hand, that was an area we addressed more permanently this year with that 18-step case reroute. But just by how quickly that was eroding where the strings would tell people to go, shows the significant amount of use. Stevens Corner is often full as well, so I don't know if you would double the number that they're seeing at the entrance at least. So it's a lot of visitors. As for, and I think it is the most of any of the state parks, not including, or maybe including, but not, Baxter's like a different organization. And Acadia probably has more visitors. As far as snowmobiles, I wouldn't think the impact of snowmobiles would be that large, given that there's snow on the ground most of the time along there. There might be patches that get thin, but when the ground is frozen, you're doing a lot less damage. I think a bigger risk to the trails is when the season is changing, during mud season especially, there's still a bit of ice here and there, and people are going around that and carving new trails. That creates a lot of damage.
How many miles of trail would you estimate you have in Camden Hills State Park?
I think it's probably around 30 miles. I tried to add up all the footpaths once because like I don't really care about the multi-use, so that didn't seem like what I was here to do. You know, I'm working on footpaths, and there's about 20 miles of footpaths on the map. There are ones that bikers have cut that are not recognized or perhaps even known about at some levels. Shouldn't do too much about that. There are the ones that the state wants to put on the map, like some of the ones over at the Millerite ledges and that area. And I went out with Rosie one day, got the lay of the land there, and I got a GPS track of what's out there. And then I went back and visited it another time to like get a cleaner GPS track. And when I walked away from it, I thought, well, you know, this is great to open it up and put it on the map. However, it's more of those straight line trails. There are sections that really want to be rerouted before we put them on the map. And so I haven't given them the GPS track yet because I'm trying to find somebody to talk to give me permission to do that rerouting where necessary for sustainability, because otherwise they're just gonna wash away and be harder to deal with later. So, and there's still a question about the parking. I think Rose has argued or offered, didn't argue perhaps, he offered to build a parking lot if they paid for materials or something like that.
That was with Coastal Mountain.
That was with Coastal Mountains, okay. Anyway, I brought up to them the parking lot there, and they were less than receptive to that at this point. Because the issue is there's all these entrances. Well, there's two issues there. One is limited parking, and they feel that if they build it, they will come and then they'll park at the neighbor's house, which was a problem. The other issue is that it would be another place for people to park without having to pay. And they're already losing out on a lot of revenue because of all the entrances. And I don't know why they haven't adopted like little hang tags in there, but you know, things move slow. Yes.
So I think we recognize how fortunate we are to have this here, but it's like when Captain John Smith was anchored off from Montego, and he wrote about a place. No one's living here except Native Americans. And he wrote about a place where the mountains meet the sea. There's no other place on the coast of Maine where the mountains meet the sea. That we can just come right out. We're so fortunate to have this, and the earliest settlers also recognize this, and there are, you know, on the historic part of this, there are multiple syllables all over the Camden Hills and Lincolnville side that they found. You think of this as a mountain, but when you get up over there, and you can imagine that by 1850, this was completely clipped up. This was bald.
Right.
There was no trees.
Right.
They stripped them all. And
What about the giant hemlocks along Springbrook though?
it's all gone. This is all good. This is all gone.
So those are all.
Yeah, and this is so interesting. You know, back to me is we're so fortunate to have this in our backyard. And we need to take care of it, because if we don't, we will be gone. We will be short. So, yeah, this is a great program.
Good job, Eric. This is really impressive what you've done so far. The Coastal Mountain Land Trust people, to whom I may volunteer, have some people counters on some of the trails. It's very limited, but something people on bicycles. There are any plans to do that? And it knows anything else?
I feel like I've heard mention of that, but I won't wait until I see it. I think it could take a little while.
Is there any requirement that they not want to be all in there?
No.
I have a practical question.
Yep.
About building staircases.
Sure.
Well, kind of two parts. One, how far do you usually bring the rocks? Like how far do we look for rocks to bring to a certain site? And then another one is like, how is it really difficult to make it so you're confident that it's stable? So you know, like it's not like just gonna collapse.
Yeah, there's two questions. The first one, how far do we go for rocks? That depends on what you're trying to accomplish and how far the rocks are from the site. And sometimes, if there's not a lot of rock, you might go to a plan B. Like, I mean, if you're trying to build a staircase, there might not be a lot of other options aside from rerouting a section of trail because you just don't have enough rock to build that. Or you could do a wooden staircase, but then again, that's limited in how long it's going to last. We always start by looking for rocks to be uphill because it's much easier to roll them down. But like even this morning, I was rolling rocks uphill because on the uphill side of the trail, rocks were extremely hard to find, probably because they'd all been used already in a staircase nearby. So I was looking downhill and having much better luck. And sometimes I'll get a rock out of the ground and be like, well, that was pretty big. Maybe I don't want to roll that one up. I'm going to look for a smaller one. So you have to make decisions based on that. And if you're lucky, you don't have to move things too far, but you never know. And as far as building something stable, I guess, so with staircases, I always try to get step rocks that have at least a relatively flat surface on top. Rocks are imperfect, so it is what it is, but make it a friendly step, because if it's not a friendly step, people are going to go around it, which is the whole reason you're building the staircase, is because this hillside was getting eroded and people are going everywhere. So you got to make them friendly steps. And then, if you're like really putting your weight around on all the points of the stairs and it's not moving, then you're good. It takes some practice to get to that point, but when the stairs are solid, I feel good about them. Rock is heavy, so it doesn't want to go anywhere. It's harder to set smaller rocks because they don't have as much weight to lock into place, and then we fill soil back around them afterwards. Also, the rocks on the sides. So you saw we have not only the steps, but the rocks that hold the soil and prevent people from walking directly on the side and eroding that away. Now, people can still step on those rocks, that's fine. And they will. You never know where a person's going to step, especially there's people coming multiple directions. There's trail runners, and their stride might have them landing on one of the what I call scree rocks, and people call them gargoyles because they like guard the side of the trail. So those also have to be stable. Beyond the ones that contact the steps and the other scree rocks, I don't care if they're totally stable, so watch your ankles if you step on this.
On the ocean side of the park, there's a tremendous historic resource there with the rocks that go down to the shore. I was one of the editors of the Camden Comprehensive Plan, and I wrote a chapter on that part of the park that went way back when it was planned to be a amphitheater for 1,500 people. And even when you go down there today on the steps, you can see it's very, those guys in the CCC really know how to put rocks. Where there's seats like, they call them bobcats, seats around a little rock that's almost level, like there at the tail. And the stairs, some of them are sort of tenuous, especially once they come up with it. But it's reassuring to me that you'd be doing it and collecting rocks for any rebuild or modification that are not part of that amphitheater or array. And I'd love to go there with you sometime, because there's things that most people don't know, like on the very north end of it, over the stream, there's a kitchen. And there's also an altar around the stream. And I probably encountered about easily a dozen of these tables with the benches around them or bouncing the seats. One of them, you know, I didn't realize it until I looked at the site a while. And it's, oh my God, you know, it's about 8-foot diameter.
Wow.
So that's a resource that's really would be nice to take back to the historic way it was.
Right, where are these exactly?
Well, go to the ocean side of the park.
Yep.
That's that beautiful little stone gatehouse.
Yep.
And then go to the south parking area.
Okay, yeah. Are you talking where there's like staircases that come around? Are you talking where there's staircases that kind of like diverge and go down?
Well,
Or
some of
the-
that wood, at the top, I think it's that wood, not because it's original design, but as you were saying here, like people use it as a shortcut. And now it's like a bona fide trail there.
Well, there's like two staircases that like the trail goes apart and there's two staircases going down, the trail goes back together. I don't know if that's where you were talking.
I think we are, and the part that is between is all overgrown.
Oh, okay.
I'll go there with some.
Yeah, so it might need to be like just cleaned up brush to see what you're.
There's a lot of tree falls there that have to be cleaned up, but it'd be nice to try not to bring it up to 2023. You know, it's something that's. But again, it's an amazing resource that we have for that park and the CCC did back at that time. And I really enjoyed learning about it when I have that chapter. I hear a lot about it now, but if you go there, I'll read it.
Cool, yeah, I'd like to hear more history on it. Because it's been hard to you know, just like talking to Sunshine, for instance, or Lester, Kenway, you know, I've learned little bits about when certain things were built, but there's so much out there that I don't know when it was built. Cool.
I mean, Sunshine's done an amazing job since she figured it out. Absolutely. The whole character of that park is different. It's like now it's open arms. It's beauty, whether it might be all these lilies at these little, little islands.
Yep. Which those are going to fill in.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
And volunteers.
Yep. Yeah, that's part of my reason coming here was that I've been volunteering and I still do. I still have maintained a section of DAT on North Crocker, as well as some boundary land for the Maine Appalachian Trail Club. And I've been doing that for 7 or 8 years now. And I was like, this is an amazing organization. All this work, the regular maintenance is getting done by volunteers. They do hire a seasonal trail crew, but like the regular maintenance is getting done by volunteers because the trail crew would otherwise be spending the entire season on that and not getting those rock that rock work done. And when I came to the park to volunteer, it was like, oh, is our ranger who knows about trail work here today? No, here's a weed whacker who helped the campground. And that happened to me about 4 times before the trail guy actually was there one day. And we actually did some maintenance, and I realized that the park hardly had any tools for it, and the depth of knowledge on rock work wasn't what I had. So I came back to him and was like, hey, Sunshine, can I be your trails ranger? So we kind of took it from there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for that.